Welcome. My name is Gabi Mutuba, and this is the Listening Threshold, where we bend the world to the sounds of our own voices. This is episode number 2, and today's episode is themed Create. Just create. And just like last week, I have compiled 3 questions that I've been asked throughout my career and that really stood out for me. And I think it will help a lot of aspiring musicians or artists, sound artists, who are, still questioning and finding their process and finding their way. Question number 1 is, what did you do to get your voice to grow and become so sonorous? Okay, what did I do to get my voice to grow? Like today's theme, create, just create. So every time I am asked to be on a project, or I'm asked to feature on a song, or I work on new music, for me, it's really an opportunity to create and, like I said, to figure out what it is that I hear. What is it that the project is asking of me as an artist? And what do I want to attempt? What do I want to figure out? What do I want to play around with? So just like my journey, the first project that I was involved with was Project Elo, and this was released in 2013 by Dumi Mukhorosi, and he approached me and asked me to sing on the track Togozila Queen Mother. And at the time, I was experimenting with a few sounds, and I also had this, Beyonce and Rihanna thing that I really wanted to do. And I just thought, my first thought was, wow, I'm gonna get to try this thing that I'm thinking about on this on this track. And it's really just as simple as that. There was something that I was hearing, and this was also an opportunity for me to play around with the sound and see how it could fit in this context. And the song was really beautiful and quite successful over the years. And it really put me on the map, as a South African singer. But for me personally, it was fun because I got to try out something that I was doing at the time, and you know, I got to learn about the texture of my voice in that kind of quiet state, but in that like strong and confident timbre, so yeah, that was Project Elo. And then 2 years later, um, we released Sanctum Sanctorium. That was a duo project with Malcolm Braff, and this was released with the assistance of Pro Helvetia. We did a month-long residency in Switzerland and asked Malcolm Braff to join us in the project. I'll link it through in the bio as well for you guys to listen to it if you haven't heard it before. But like I said, that was also for me immediately when I heard, we have an opportunity to create a new album. My first thought was, I'm going to try out this thing that I've been thinking about. And at the time, I was listening a lot to Gretchen Parlato, um, and thinking about her sound, this quiet sound, but this had like a lot of strength, a lot of texture to it, and it was really interesting to me at the time. So I created according to this timbre, and I created an atmosphere where that sound was gonna just blend beautifully. And it did. Sanctum Sanctorum was also a beautiful, beautiful album, duo album that I did with Dumi Mkhorosi. I think this was released in around 2016. Then the following year, well, 2 years after that, um, I released Tefiti, Goddess of Creation. And again, I was listening to music at the time that had a lot of strings and the compositional. Um, I had a lot of these compositional questions, like how do I create a project where the sound that I'm thinking about can be, you know, can be held in a very beautiful way. And at the time, I was obsessed with Gerald Clayton. I think he had just released a live forum. And I thought, oh my God. And on that album, Gretchen Parlato is also on there. So she's been a very, very big influence for me. Not just her sound, but like just how she built worlds around her sound. It's not just about, like I said, not just about your music, but I think thinking about it in relation to your outside, thinking about it in the idea of self-awareness, in the idea of that your sound is holding your story. It's holding your environment, it's holding your experience, your language, your aesthetic, it's holding your grandmother, it's holding your, aunts, it's holding how you play, it's holding how you relate, how you love. So all of that is being held within your sound. And if you're able to really honor that, you kind of know the context in which that sound can thrive, right? So this was a very big theme for me. How does where is my sound going to thrive? Um, so with Tafiti Queen Mother, I was listening again to strings, and I just really wanted to experiment with this kind of sound. And I thought to myself, if I can compose something that, is on a bit of strings and the compositional structure is in a way that, the delivery is really soft but strong. And I think I attempted it. Definitely was the first attempt on Tefiti, a goddess of creation. And, it taught me a lot about myself, my sound, and, just to answer the question, my sound kept growing because I kept experimenting with different environments. This created a lot more awareness, a lot more clarity in terms of what my voice was, what it could do, and of course, what it couldn't do, in terms of what were my voice's boundaries. And this is very important, I think, for any singer to establish what are the boundaries. Where are we? And not to say a boundary in terms of capability, because, like I said, if it can be perceived, you are one foot in the door, you can create it. So, a boundary is not to say like a range limitation, but a boundary is what doesn't honor the sound, what doesn't serve the sound, um, and to be able to kind of, you know, hear the other, you know, so that when you are traversing along the hinterlands, it is something that is done with awareness, and it is something that is a powerful conversation and it is a powerful idea when it's, I think, when it's approached with intention, So, yeah, so that was Tafiti. Then 2 years later was I think the project that really um, stretched me and my voice in ways that I wouldn't have expected, and in a way that I wouldn't have written for myself. So we formulated a group called The Ratchet, thinking about 2017. In 2018, we started kind of conceptualizing the project in relation to Frantz Fanon's The Ratchet of the Earth. And we started speaking about, it would be really interesting for us to kind of be in conversation with this text. And immediately, I mean, I got excited in terms of what I thought the voice could potentially contribute to this experiment, to this creative process. So, of course, I'm speaking about The Ratchet, which is a band with myself, Dumi Mokgorosi, and Andre van Beek. And together we were looking at the first chapter, which was concerning violence. And we kind of, yeah, each had our own process. But for me, vocally, it was definitely something I had thought about my voice, and what constitutes my voice and what does my voice mirror, you know. The Ratchet for me was really a moment for me to really hear Empire in a very unfiltered way and to be able to really hear what it is that I was hearing, in the world on a daily, and to put that in song, to put that in this in the sonic landscape. So that was The Ratchet, and we released that project in 2020. That project really it grew my voice in an extraordinary way, like I said, in a way that I wouldn't have expected. And it was not because, I was growing older or maturing, I don't think. But it's because I think for the first time there were no limitations. There were no genre limitations. There was no insistence on beauty, insistence on music making. This was really just to serve this idea of violence, and it was it called for me to kind of really be in a sonic conversation with the embodiment of violence through sound, through the voice, and what that meant. So I think with that, like I said, my voice really stretched incredibly, and I was able to really grow ranges, really grow in depth, really grow in richness, just because of that, creative experimentation. And of course, about 4 years after that was my project, The Sabbath. But through between 2020 and 2024, already I'd heard the growth and I was able to create within that growth. Um, so yeah, create, keep making music, publish it as in any kind of platform. It's really, don't think about it in the sense of this needs to be well received or not, but it's really to put your voice under the fire, you know, to put it really through the furnace and have it see what it can create, what can come out of that process. So yeah, I think that's how I got my voice to grow, is just to continuously create, continuously make music, continuously experiment, continuously collaborate. And my voice then, was revealed to me through all these creative processes. Question number 2. Are voice or vocal exercises limited to only singers or aspiring singers? The obvious or the simple answer here is no. What I've realized also through my voice growing is that it was not only serving the stage, it was not limited, the growth was not limited to me picking up a microphone and singing in front of, many people, but it really helped to carve out also my speaking, just talking with people, because I think the most fundamental thing that an awareness of a singer has is their relationship to the ear, to that auditory system, to that perceived sound, because it's no longer about singing to make a song, but it is the relationship between what a sound is supposed to sound like within your own auditory imagination. So this is also, translated to speaking, orators, motivational speakers, public speaking. I think that a singer's, vocal exercises, vocal techniques can translate so beautifully on an array of platforms. As long as one is using the voice, is using sound, it is very beneficial to have a very, very close relationship with your voice, and like I said, singing techniques brings you into a very personal and intimate relationship with your voice and your sound. Um, because I think this is how we become effective, it's not just knowing what to say, but it is knowing how it's supposed to sound, how it's supposed to land, how it sits in the body. So this has also helped tremendously in communication. And I think, of course, like a singer, we don't just sing on stage, we communicate ideas. Sometimes we speak foreign languages in order to connect with our audiences. So this has been very beneficial in also those kind of, in those marginal spaces where it's not just about me singing my music, but me being able to communicate that, I am here to form community. I value the space, and I am also in conversation with this new ecological footprint that I am, that I am in the midst of, you know. So yeah, I definitely think that singing techniques and voice exercises are beneficial to any person who is prioritizing communication, any person who prioritizes community building. This is such an effective tool um, for one to have, in order, like I said, to be effective. So, like I said, and speaking is also a voice exercise. I think once we are very uncomfortable in speaking, that is also telling of the relationship that we have with our own voices and that we have with sound. This can be an indication that one's relationship with one's sound needs a bit of growth, needs a bit of watering, needs a bit of nurturing. You know, with the singers, I'm always telling them, don't be shy. you know, say your opinion, speak your mind. It is for your ear to hear how it is that you hold words, how it is that you hold phrases, what it is that you're communicating. And like I said, how it sounds to you, how it sits within you. This is also a great indicator in the relationship that you have with your voice. So speak to your friends, speak in conversation and have awareness when there's little cracks in your voices, in your voice, and have awareness when you're a bit uncomfortable in your body, when you're supposed to say something. This is just an indicator that, okay, I have to grow in this place, or I have to nurture this, this kind of sound. And yeah, I think it's extremely beneficial. Like I said, in many places, and for me, it's been not just a blessing for me as a singer, but also, like I said, as a communicator, as a person who is trying to build relationships in the world. Question number 3. Why do you hammer this idea between the voice and the ear? What is so significant about this relationship? I'm going to read again a paragraph from Refiguring American Music, and this chapter reads, "We can begin to comprehend how the emergences of European imperial orders and the concomitant rise of political democracies have also been matters of the ear. Sound studies have heightened our attention to what we might call auditory significance, to the power and the effect of sound's production and its reception in the formation of social and political orders. In a foundational historical work, for example, Elaine Corbin demonstrates how village bells in 19th century France had an ordering effect on the feel and character of town living. The audible clarity of the bell's tone became a source of contests over Roman Catholic and New Republic definitions of time, identifying the focus of debates about sound's sacral and secular symbolism, as well as its ownership under law. As a colonizing force in the rise of empire, moreover, sound productions became a key tool in imposing other forms of discipline and order. At the outset, sound's presence was anything but orderly. Occupations were inherently noisy and chaotic, involving massive interventions of people, animals, materials, and things, of assembling, working, training, and discoursing, of violence, negotiation, and engagement. In its participation in social order, however, sound production quickly assumed a role in organizing human behavior." I think I'll leave it there. What this is alluding to is the profound relationship that the sound that your voice has with, like I said, your environment, your world. This is so important. The world lives within our voices. And for me, that was such a powerful realization, because what it was saying is that the more awareness that I brought into my sound, into what it is that I produce, is serving not just me as a singer, but education in terms of what it is that influences me. What am I influenced by? Influenced by this information of influence lives within my sound, lives within my voice. And because I am a sound artist and I've dedicated so many hours to understanding sound, it's kind of allowing me to, to focus on like one file, one department, which is the sound department. And that sound department is going to help me understand all departments, because it's trying to say that empire did not just affect the way that you live, the way that you come to the world, but it also has an effect and an implication in the way that you come to sound. So if you can understand the way that you come to sound, you are going to be able to understand how you come to the world. And this for me, like I said, it serves it serves on one way my singing, but also in another way it serves as kind of information in how worlds are built. And this, I think, for singers, for creators, for music makers, speaks to the idea of, albums and bodies of work, how an idea is embodied and how it requires a world in which to, manifest and to perform itself, you know, because if I really, I think very, very honestly about this idea of empire sounds and the concept, you know, then it means that the sound is, the part of the accoutrement of the empire. You know, my voice becomes this extension of a particular idea, and the world presents an opportunity for that idea to be enacted. So my voice is like is part of the verb, the doing of the idea of the empire, and I am the noun, and the empire is this conceptual idea. And if I'm able to think about it in this way, I'm able to become a lot more efficient in kind of building worlds or experimenting with, with building new worlds, in the sense that I can have little mini prototypes. I find that albums are, these little prototypes that I can build, these little inventions of worlds, depending on the concept that I have, and the kind of sound that that concept would produce or can produce, and the kind of world that that concept needs in order to be enacted. And by doing so, of course, like I said, like I mentioned earlier, the idea of boundary is very, very important. So it is very important for me to, of course, build a sound that, you know, that of course is the embodiment of the conceptual framework that I come with. But at the same time, I need to be very aware of what that sound is not. Both need to exist in the space. The opposite needs to also be, the opposite also needs to be within the arena in order for you to be able to decipher what is. So what is not is something that brings to us attention in terms of what is. And this was, I didn't just run into this idea. This was a lot of reading also in the field of Black studies, just this idea of community, the definition. Aristotle, I think, is the one who came with the original definition of community, in that it is man who are banded together with a common cause. But later on, I think with Black studies, it really proved otherwise. But it is establishing what is not the definitive characteristics of a particular people that holds a collective together, that holds a community together. And this is what sound is. So in order for our sounds to be clear, we need to be clear about what it is not. And of course, within more episodes, I'll be able to unpack this even more. But I think we will leave it there today. This is really, really great, and I hope it's been useful for upcoming singers, composers, sound artists, sonic artists. And yeah, thank you. And thank you for staying tuned until the end. Make sure that you leave a like and a comment and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any more episodes. This has been the Listening Threshold, where we bend the world to the sounds of our own voices. I'll see you on the next one. Peace and love.